Hi, I'm Cindy, and welcome to Pearls of Liberty, January 7th, 2012. There are a lot of things that we wanted to comment on this week, and the first one is the Iowa caucus and the possibility that there was voter fraud.
Yeah, I don't think most people believe that Santorum really had this surge. The surge was exposed as being bogus, but the establishment ran with it anyway, and there was even an announced secret deal between Santorum and Romney that how they were going to divide these unaccounted for missing votes or whatever. And of course Ron Paul wasn't in on that, so that's immediate red flag right there. But I heard reports of caucuses that were going like 40% for Ron Paul, and there's just no indication of that in the media, the establishment media. So I think there is really probably a pretty strong indication that there was fraud. Of course, Paul came in second on the record, but this surge of Santorum, I think, is totally bogus. And I think that this is the hype that they've been wanting to give this man for a while, because I think that what they're trying to do is they're trying to transition into this new paradigm for the Christian right, which is the statism and the establishment of by God, we're going to take this country back, and you people are not going to be able to do abortions and anything else we don't want you to do. And that's the pendulum swing that they're counting on. They're counting on all of the Christians being so fed up with the immorality that they're going to jump on the statist Santorum bandwagon and saying, we're going to take over government and we're not going to let you do anything that would displease God. And I believe that's very displeasing to God. So it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out.
Sure, and the way these people work just generally is they don't just get us in a stranglehold and not let up. They'll get us in a stranglehold, release a little bit, come back tighter, release a little bit, come back tighter.
Yeah, and you don't know you're in a stranglehold.
Right.
You just get used to it. Most people don't even realize that, well, more and more are realizing that the media is completely phony. That this left versus right, people were so fed up with the liberal media that when Fox News was introduced, everybody goes, and Rush Limbaugh, everybody goes, oh, thank goodness, somebody's speaking the truth. But it was well prepared to not talk about the things that are the real agenda. If you go to that famous quote from Carol Quigley, who was Bill Clinton's mentor from way back, the Georgetown Law School days, etc., it said that it's a foolish idea to think that you should have opposing views in the main parties. You want there to be as little change as possible, and the people thinking that they can throw the rascals out will just enable the program to go on, and this march towards vertical control will be unabated. You just have this false distinction between left and right, and most people bought into the, oh, Fox Media is our savior thing, and don't even suspect that they should try to find a way out. Of course, those of us that get the news on the internet, most of us have found the way out.
Sure. Well, I certainly thought of Fox News at one time as being a kind of a salvation, and it's nice to feel that you are a part of something big and powerful. I think there's just a human desire for that, but it betrays us, because the reality is if we're that way, we can so easily be hurted. So
yes,
resist.
Absolutely.
Resist the tendency.
And understand the differences between a statist mentality, one that wants government to solve all the issues. Oh, we've got a big problem, we need government to solve it for us. And solutions that say, you are empowered people, go and solve it. And the empowerment that we need, obviously, is a major financial restructuring, and I think that's what we're going to talk about next.
Yeah, it seems that on the horizon there is kind of a reboot of the financial system. So do you want to begin that discussion?
I thought you were going to begin it. But there is a growing recognition that the Federal Reserve fiat money system is going down the toilet and something new needs to happen. Of course, what's been happening in Europe is this gobbling up of the sovereignty of the individual nations, and then they're going to feed it all into the EU, and then they're going to collapse that and say we've got a plan for you, but it's going to be along the lines of a Federal Reserve fiat type plan. One of the things I've suspected for a long time is that with the Federal Reserve coming into existence in 1913, they had in a private group the control of the money system, and it was on a gold standard and then a quasi-gold standard until Nixon completely took us off in 1971. And that was, of course, Ron Paul's entrance into politics, that was the reason he got in, because he knew going off the gold standard was a bad thing. But when these guys, these con men, put a system in place, they know what they're doing, and they anticipate that the con is going to be found out in the end. And there's virtually no way that it could not be found out. In 2008, all my red flags went off, and all the study I'd done before said this is it. So they know that people are going to wake up and see it, and they have prepared their replacement system. So the question is what is that, and how can we avoid being conned? How can we know that the people that are offering us something better are not more new con men? Well, we may not be able to tell at first. All we really need to be able to do is, what we should do is examine not the people so much as the system and that's being offered, and see if it really is something that will prevent enslavement and enable people to utilize their God-given potential, etc. Whether see if it's a true meritocracy, and it is open-ended. I don't think it needs to be too structured. I think that if it's going to be a big government system, I think that's a problem. I think we need to radically pare down government, but we need to transition away from that, because so many people are dependent on government, and removing that immediately would bring hardship. Now, I personally don't think Ron Paul is going to do that. I think he knows that we need to transition away. I believe this is a compassionate man. When you look at him, you might not see the typical compassion that you'd see in somebody that's used to emoting their compassion in order to sway people. I believe he has deeply compassionate values that are inside of him that many people don't see. And we'll find out, of course, how this all plays out, but there is no doubt that we're going into some difficult times. Anybody that says that we're not is blowing smoke, but anybody that says that this has to be this horrendous dog-eat-dog world and we're immediately got to go into this austerity program is not dealing with it either. And I do have some concerns about Ron Paul being in the latter camp, but I don't know how it's all going to shake out. I do want to see some principles of the land tax and Henry George and that worked into the new system foundationally. So far, I haven't seen that. So far, I haven't seen enough detail from the people that are proposing new things, and these people are so nebulous that they don't even have names. We just have websites and connections that give some indications that we're going someplace we don't even know where it is yet. But yeah, this is time to begin the economic education, because more and more people are realizing that we really, really need it. People are waking up to the bogus fiat money system, but there is a valid argument that all money is fiat money. In other words, gold isn't really money, it's a commodity. As soon as you say this is the basis of all our money, you've created a fiat system because you attach a value to it, more or less arbitrarily. As long as government is big enough to be the one that sets the standard, then I think you're going to have some fiat economics that enter in there. And anybody that says that you just pick a commodity and then you let that commodity fluctuate isn't living in the real world, because government is so big and so comprehensive now that you can't get away from the whole concept of government naming something as a commodity and attaching value to it and having that not be a fiat system. Gold is a fiat system. Most people don't recognize that, but that's true. So we'll see where all this goes.
And in thinking about this, we've been talking about this quite a bit and thinking quite a bit, and there are some good articles that we found, and we'll include those links in the comment section under the video on YouTube. But one thing that I've been thinking about is Jesus said that the husbandman, the farmer, goes in and plants the seed, and then while he's sleeping, the enemy comes in and plants some tares. So even if this is a very clean or fairly clean system, even if it's a triumph of the white dragons, white hats, white knights, whatever, which we hope, and it seems likely or at least possible, but there's always, in any shift, there's always the seed of the next enslavement or issue or problem, because we live in the world. It's a fallen world, and unless we head into the millennium this year, we need to be on our guard. Whatever shape, whatever form they take, these seeds, the tares have been planted or will be planted along with the good seed. So no matter what happens, it's crucial to be educated. It's crucial to be involved in what's going on. It's crucial to take a hand in your future, basically. So we've been talking about if something really good happens, there's a wealth transfer and it's wonderful for many people, we can't let down our guard and push the autopilot button. We have to continue to become more awake and aware and continue to educate more people and move into the next form, whatever it is, with a higher awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I think if there's one thing that we can do, a benchmark that we can keep in mind to gauge whatever comes next, and that will help us to keep the thing on the track, it's this: is banking the servant or the master? Right now, we're in the situation where banking is the master. It's telling governments what to do. It's the master actually of the corporations, and the corporations are telling the governments what to do, or skipping the step of the corporations, vice versa. At any rate, people that focus on the corporations don't usually say, hey, it's the banking system that's running the corporations. It's the banking system that is currently the master, and it needs to be the servant. It's just like, it's a wonderful life. You have that contrast right there. And that's what we need to keep in mind as we go into this new era. We need to demand a banking system that's the servant. That doesn't mean that the banking system needs to give us everything we want. No, that needs to make enough money available so that there is free exchange based on the merit of goods and services. So if people that have a great deal to offer are not, and I'm talking obviously not only in terms of talent, but in terms of discipline and work and the ability to do things, if they're not able to get funding, well, that's a red flag. So keep that kind of thing in mind, and as we structure for the future, ask yourself, is banking becoming more of a servant and less of a master? Because that's what we need.
And it is, if you follow Alex Jones, you know that Lindsey Williams said that the dollar wouldn't collapse until the end of 2012. And perhaps that is true. But whatever shift, this economic shift that's coming, it seems to be coming very quickly within the next month or so. At least the beginnings of it will become evident. It's not a guarantee. We'll put up the links and you read the articles and determine your own opinion. But one thing that we've speculated about is that with the issue that's happening in Iran and Israel, it seems like some people are trying to push buttons to start World War III. And with the NDAA, that there's martial law possibly threatened in the United States, that the good guys felt like they had to do something now. And we're really hoping that that's what is going on behind the scenes, that the people who do intend good are kind of taking an upper hand and helping to determine the outcomes of what's happening.
I think what we're seeing is we're seeing pressure being put on the establishment to move this thing in the direction for good, and whether or not we completely keep it on a for good track remains to be seen. And one of the things that was clearly pointed out, I want to state it here, it's in the links that Cindy's going to post, but is that the only thing that could derail this economic restructuring is World War III. And that is what the powers that be want to engineer. That's what they've engineered at all previous times in the past, whenever they've exhausted a money system that has gone on this interest curve. That's all these guys know how to do with debt-based fiat money systems, and the key being that it's interest-bearing. So if it's interest-bearing, the life of a money system is limited, because it's going to approach, the interest curve is going to approach this asymptotic point where it just escalates beyond the ability to sustain the debt. That's where we're at now. So what these guys have always done at times in previous in history is they have said, we're going to start a new war, and then we can mold society. When people are really malleable, they're really fearful, they will do whatever their government tells them to do, and they will utilize that to bring in their new structure, which has always been less freedom rather than more freedom. It's always been more state control rather than less state control at each one of these junctures. This one needs to be different, and we need to keep watching and doing everything we can to avoid a new World War III and avoid this totalitarian thing that wants to be pressed upon us. Don't be deceived that we have more technology now. We have more technology but less freedom, and that police state is getting more and more obvious every day. So, but on the other hand, we've never had greater opportunity. We're really at a shifting and turning point, and we need to be able to keep our eyes open, make sure that this thing goes in the right direction. If not, we've got this thing called the internet we can use to cry bloody murder. And so do it while you can.
Absolutely. And speaking of crying bloody murder, it's probably reasonable to kick and scream a little bit based on some comments that President Obama, and I use that term loosely, made this week regarding his ability to step in and take over authority. And I heard part of a speech wherein he said that if Congress is moving too slowly, which I haven't noticed that Congress is moving too slowly, but it seems to me like they're acting with lightning quickness, approving the NDAA and some negative things like that, but not quickly enough, I guess, for Obama. And he said if they don't act quickly enough, that he's just going to step in and do whatever's necessary to see that steps are taken.
Yeah, he said, I wish I didn't have to deal with Congress, and maybe I won't. And he got a huge, words to that effect, he got a huge applause from the crowd, which was really, really scary. People should know better than to say, oh, we want you to take over the role of Congress, which is what he was begging for in his oratory. So this is, like I said, a turning point in which America either embraces the dark road to totalitarian slave status, or turns a corner and goes to the road of freedom, and we see both in process. Some of the interesting dynamic with this Obama power grab stuff is that I see that there has been a talking point in the so-called mainstream media, which aren't not mainstream anymore, but a talking point about the recess appointments and that Obama has made, and pointing out this as being a huge power grab, and then people that know better saying, no, there's been more recess appointments in the past, and this is not a big deal that he's doing. Well, all that's true, all that's well and good, and the recess itself and how that was managed is kind of suspect. But what the point of all of that, the point of all of this recess appointment power grab thing is to get you to focus in the wrong place about the power grab. There was actually a really good, I think it was Jon Stewart that had a segment about saying that he was thinking that this power grab must have to do with the NDAA, but no, it had to do with something else. So yeah, I think that he's exposing that the real power grab is the National Defense Authorization Act. It's not about recess appointments. And he didn't say this, but I'll say it, Congress is completely complicit. They are part of the problem. So when you see Obama trying to blame Congress, no, they went along. They did everything that they were supposed to do in approving this militarization of the armed services in America, which is a very, very bad thing. So the power grab is real. The recess appointment thing is a smokescreen to keep you from seeing the real thing.
Yeah, it's the NDAA is very bad news for us all, as we've discussed in the past. The answer is for us to wake up and say no, and do it en masse. So spread the word, tell your friends.
The focal point is Ron Paul. Everybody who has any sense of liberty can see that the man is completely committed to individual liberty, and I'm just hoping that the Christians can get on board and see that no, he is not for homosexuality, no, but he just understands that we can't have the state playing God. We have to let people live their lives the way that they want to live them.
Yes, I like that. I want to live my life the way I want to live it.
Mm-hmm.
We saw a few movies this week that we wanted to mention, and one of them was a documentary, RFK Must Die. It's very deep and very depressing. Well, maybe not very depressing, but the truth hurts, and you just it's presented in a very succinct and easy to understand package.
Yeah. Obviously, even though the RFK assassination, Robert F. Kennedy assassination happened way back in the 60s, this is a new documentary within the last couple of years, and there is new information in it, and most of that new information has to do with the presence of CIA at that hotel where he was shot, and different suspicious things that happened regarding that and the whole setup, and more evidence about Sirhan, mind control, interviews with somebody who'd written a book focusing on that. Excellent information, very well done, and just seeing Robert Kennedy talk to groups of people in California right before the California primary and in campaign stuff for other states, you see a man that I know had a sincere desire to stop this at each other's throats thing that has been happening in America for a long time. What we've got now is not new. It's just morphed into something different, and it is really just divide and conquer that has been played against the American people. The same old, same old. So it's interesting to see shadows of that in the 1960s that we have today, the divide and conquer. We have to rise above it. Robert Kennedy was rising above it at that time, and we see Ron Paul rising above it today. So I've said before that the Kennedy agenda, or that Robert F. Kennedy, that JFK, John Kennedy, did when he was president is very much what Ron Paul wants to do, and that is, Kennedy was taking steps, although he didn't state it publicly. He issued an executive order that was taking control away from the Federal Reserve System, and he said that he was going to end the CIA. And Ron Paul has said that we've had a coup of the CIA in America. He's said that publicly. And this is a man who has great courage, because I think the only reason they don't take him out is he's not a great orator. And so you better thank God that he's not, because if he were able to just do Martin Luther King level speeches, he might not be alive today. But I did read an interesting column today that said that Ron Paul is very skilled at rhetoric, and rhetoric and oratory are two different things. If you ever notice how skillfully he handles the media, he really is brilliant. He always brings it back to his foundation of liberty, and there's really no arguing with that.
It is sad when thinking about the Kennedy assassination, about John Kennedy. It seemed like at that time there was a shift, and I think a lot of the grieving that people did was that they sensed that there was a shift in control of the nation without actually knowing it in their minds. I think there just was maybe on the soul level or the spiritual level, there was a shift that people could feel. And that is the reversal of that is what we are really hoping for with the Ron Paul candidacy, and even with this economic restructuring. We're hoping that it will bring about that kind of a shift that will allow this country to return to, well, not even return, but to kind of morph into what maybe John Kennedy and Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King and some others had a vision for.
Yeah, it's really the battle that has been America's primary battle from the very beginning. America's struggles have always been against foreign control of our money system. Ever since the colonial days. Benjamin Franklin even said the real cause of the Revolutionary War was that the British took away our right to coin our own money, or to make our own certificates of exchange, which was the colonial script that was outlawed. And that created such harsh economic conditions that the eventual result was the Revolutionary War. Every president since then that has opposed the establishment banking system foisted upon us from Europe was assassinated or attempted to be assassinated. And you can go down the line and name them. And Andrew Jackson avoided the assassination, and then there was Garfield, and who was poisoned, and then there was I think McKinley also, and then
well, Lincoln.
And yeah, then Lincoln with the greenback, and then Kennedy.
Yeah, so as you said, it has been a long battle, and pray, because we need to be released from this.
Yeah, actually Taft was also very good. He said some brilliant things, and he's Ron Paul's mentor, so that he understood the true battle, and that's what is happening now. We're getting to the root.
Well, and the system is controlled by evil at the top. Alex had an interesting rant this week about the only way any of this enslavement perpetrated against mankind makes sense is that the devil himself is behind it. So the spiritual battle and the prayer battle is essential, and this isn't actually on our agenda, but we might as well mention that, because we talk about it all the time, that the great deception that catches many Christians is the idea that defending Israel is a holy cause. And Israel, there are many reasons why it's not a holy cause. I mean, for one thing, just think that there are many Christian Palestinians, and ask yourself the question, is God more likely to favor a Palestinian who's actually walking with him and depending on him, leaning on him, communicating with him, or a person living in Israel who may have some kind of a Jewish heritage, may or may not be even practicing his Jewish faith? So it's not as simple as what we've been led to believe as Christians. It's a complex issue, and throwing over everything else of value to defend Israel just doesn't seem reasonable.
Yeah, I'll just be really bold and I'll say Israel is a fraud, because they are. They are not what they appear to be to many Christians. They are not descendants of Abraham. They are not the Jewish race. The people that run it, the nation are subservient to Rothschild. Rothschild Zionism is the best ideology to use to describe Israel. They are very, very, our media, when I say our media, the controlled media, likes to highlight the abuses against Israel, but nearly every one of those is provoked, and the damage done by Israel to Palestinian neighbors and displacement and abuse of these settlements that are outside of their boundaries are far greater than the incidents that we hear about that are due to the Palestinians. So if you want more information, it's out there. There's lots of good YouTube videos. I can recommend Jews Against Zionism as a group that has a website. Truthtellers.org is Ted Pike, who started the National Prayer Network in the United States, and in the 70s under Ronald Reagan. He knows the truth and is putting that on his website. But these people will always be demonized, and they will always be called anti-Semites. And one of the phrases, just to put it bluntly, that that I think that describes the true nature of the matter is that the anti-Semites are not the people that hate Jews. They are the people who the Zionists hate. So it's a name that they throw out there to make sure that you don't listen to these people. But Jesus said, be careful how you listen. Think about it.
Absolutely. And we've mentioned it before, but Semites, what is considered to be Semites, many of them are actually not descended from Shem, which is where the term comes from. They're descended from Japheth, and there's not an unbroken bloodline for many people with Jews, which is fine. I mean, we're not about race.
It's not about race, yeah.
We're not about lifting up one and putting down another according to race anyway, which is really, in many respects, what people do when they require you to support Israel. But the reality is that if you're looking at race, they're not Sems. They're not descended from Shem. They're not Semite. If you're anti-Semite, there are hardly any real Jewish descendants left alive anywhere. They've actually been, there has been kind of a genocide against them perpetrated by,
or absorbed into different groups throughout the world.
Yeah. So a film that we saw this week that had a little bit to do with what's often considered Islamic terrorism was Incendiary. And I'd say it's emotionally one of the most powerful films I've seen in a while. I can't say it has a happy ending, but it has a satisfying ending. And we were a little disappointed because we were hoping that it would be evident at the end that what's called Islamic terror against the United States, England, this happens to be in England, is actually false flag most of the time. But I thought it was a great film.
The main theme of this story really was, and why I think Cindy was probably drawn into it more than I was, is it was about a mother and her son, and a woman whose husband worked for a bomb squad, and the woman was deeply caring for her son and a young boy, and he gets killed in this terrorist attack. So the things that she goes through emotionally it's a great human interest story. But I'm afraid that it does tend to draw you in an emotional way into the propaganda that there really are people that do these things, and not to even think about the possibility that they might be actually manipulated by your own government. And by and large, that is what happens. And in the story, there is they don't do that. They don't show that. They show a Muslim man who did do this horrible thing, and he got caught. And you have this woman that lost her son. So it kind of is, I would have to say, a propaganda piece, but with some really good human interest if you can recognize the propaganda.
Yeah, and it has. I think one of the things that I really enjoyed is the anti-war stance of the film, and it's kind of a cry from a mother's heart. Hey, do we really have to kill each other?
But but the savior is the state that keeps us from experiencing this terror. So,
well, nobody really was successful at keeping them from experiencing the terror, but she was the vehicle of the story was a letter that she was writing to Osama bin Laden, which of course is displaced, but from myself, I heard her letter to Osama as being just kind of a general cry. Hey, why do we hate each other? Can't we just...
Yeah, so it's...
Can't we all just get along?
Yeah, so it's the manipulation of that human desire into this thing that empowers the state. And that's why I say ultimately it's a propaganda piece.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. It's not something that you just watch casually. So yeah, I see what you're saying. But I think I gave it 5 stars. And we also maybe you'll want me to change that a little. We also watched The Majestic, which I think I had seen. It's an older film, and but Don had never seen it. It was quite good.
Yeah, I really liked it. And I think that this was kind of a Capra-esque, Jimmy Stewart kind of in the mold of that as a modern film. And I think it took place, I know it took place right after or in the 90s, but the film was made right before 9/11, so they couldn't really have anticipated that. I mean, maybe somebody way high up did and funded this thing, who knows. But it's very interesting because it portrays an America that has become an America after World War II, but that is descending into this police state in order to fight communism. And the parallels to the growing police state today are significant and remarkable and intended to be noticed in the film. So the Jim Carrey character is not a slapstick guy. He's not a quick-witted comedian. He plays it pretty straight, and he's very good at it. And as this character that he was involved in Hollywood, and then there was the blacklisting thing that came through Hollywood where they're trying to find all the communists, and he had attended some rally with some girl and gets called to account for that, runs away, has an accident, loses his memory, and I won't give any more of the story away than that, other than he finds a new identity and then later realizes that what's going on. But you have him grappling with some of the issues about foundational values of liberty. So from that standpoint, I think it's a great film because it causes each of us to watch it, to think, what would I do in that situation? Would I just live my life for what I could get out of it, or would I take a stand that would probably make me an outcast and I wouldn't get my life back that I wanted to get back? So I thought it was just excellent, and I would rate that one 5 stars.
Okay, I think we did. So just a thought. When you mentioned Capra-esque, I watched Harvey this weekend. I don't think it was directed by Capra, but it was a Jimmy Stewart film, and a very old one, and very lighthearted. And if you're very strict, legalistic Christian, you probably wouldn't like it because Harvey is called a puka, which is a kind of a hobgoblin or something. But it's a very tender film, and at one point, Jimmy Stewart's character said, "When I was very young, my mother told me I needed to become either to do well in this world, I would need to either be very smart or very pleasant. And I was very smart for a while, but I'd rather be pleasant. So it's a film about life and values, and even how people in the 50s were examining them. So it's a good time. It's January. You have New Year's resolutions probably. It's a good time to examine your values and consider why you're living life, and maybe make some changes.
Put on your thinking caps. Don't let appearances deceive you. Things are not as they seem. Go beneath the surface.
Yeah, good advice. Have a good week. Thanks for watching.